Thank you all for joining me. I'm Megan Drummond. I'm Special Projects Coordinator at the Early Childhood Development of PEI. I have been in the early childhood sector for 15 years.
My name is Katie Smallman. I'm owner, operator, director of We the West Childcare, located in Bloomfield, and I've been in the sector for 15 years.
I'm Elizabeth Jeffrey. I'm the owner and director of Little Wonders Early Learning Center, and I've been in the field for 42 years.
Wow.
And I'm Kathleen Flanagan. I am not at a center now, but I used to be. I used to be in government, but I've been in the sector for just about 50 years.
Wow. Well done.
Wonderful.
I am Gordy McKeeman, and I am a director at Chance's St. Jean's 1. I've been in the field for about 14 years.
And I'm Kim Gillis. I'm one of the learning managers in the Early Childhood Care and Education program at Holland College, and I've been in the sector for 30 years.
Wow. I'm Erin Reed Terrio. I'm the owner and operator director at Mighty Oaks Academy, and I've been in the sector for 8.5 years.
I'm Maura Barna. I'm an early childhood educator at Mason Road Chances, and I've been in the sector for 5 years.
So we have a huge accumulation of years between all of us in early childhood. So I do have a question to start us off with this conversation. If you think back to when you began, for some of us it's further back than others, what has been the most significant change or advancement in the sector that you've experienced?
There's so many.
Yeah.
The ones that come to mind is the respect for the work that we do, the wages and benefits that are now in place for ECEs, and the respect that not only government but society has for the work that we do and the importance of it.
I think too, now that you say that, Elizabeth, with parent fee and reductions. So our field is finally seen as accessible and affordable for children that need us, and what it means to them, and how we are professionals and we are the foundational. Yeah.
Yeah, I think the whole, like in recent years, the whole move toward looking at early childhood more as a system rather than you doing your thing and you doing your thing, and no system approach to it. I think that's been a big change.
Yeah. And I think with all that too, like it really shows that like the passion has grown as well. I started in a school age program, and I could really see the growth, not only with all the things that you guys are talking about, but also with the passion like behind the educators and the families. Like everybody is super passionate and they want to learn more and explore more about what we're doing.
Yeah.
So I think that's really awesome too.
Yeah.
So the public wants to explore it as much as anyone going into the field.
Exactly.
Yeah, I love that.
I love that, like you're saying, Kathleen, it's becoming a system, but it's now embedded into our national law, like with the Canada Early Learning and Child Care Act. It's not something that we're hopeful stays. We know that it's represented at a national and a provincial level in a way that we've never seen in history. So that's pretty exciting. And just this year.
Yes.
Yeah.
Just new.
I think too, just like in the last couple of years, like all the pathways that are accessible for educators, I think there's been a big movement in that as well. Yeah.
And the importance of the academics that go with it.
Right.
Yeah.
So leading into that, would you like to speak about the government policies and funding? So speaking of the childcare law, how has it influenced or supported the growth of quality in the sector?
I'm going to go way back on this one because early on, the PEI regulations had nothing to do with the quality of the program at all. It was, what's the square footage of your space? Do you have enough covers on the electrical outlets and things like that? And I think it was in the mid 80s. So I was in government then. And so they were going to do some changes to the regulations. And some people were really pushing that, well, we need to have a curriculum, so that should be a regulation. And others were pushing, but maybe it should be qualifications of staff, because at that time there were no qualifications. I think maybe you had to be 18 years old. And I remember saying, well, if we had the most perfect curriculum in the entire world and nobody knew how to do it, then we're no further ahead. But if people are qualified and they understand early childhood education, they'll know what to do even without a curriculum document. So in the early 80s, that's when we moved toward, in PEI, in terms of regulations and policies, moved toward having required qualifications for early childhood educators. And I think that made a big difference in how people ran their programs.
And we've just seen funding continue to be funneled into the childcare system here on PEI with our provincial government, and then now with the federal government joining in. So what kind of funding changes have you seen have affected your work or the workforce or families?
Oh my gosh, it's touched everything, really.
Yeah.
There was a time when it cost less to send a child to university than it did to send a child to childcare for a year. So that's been a massive change. And it used to be, way back when I was in the field, that most people had 2 jobs.
Right.
Because you couldn't live off what you made as an ECE. So you worked at Sobeys in the evening or something like that in order to make ends meet. And now we've got a working wage and we have benefits and we have a pension. Right? Like just things that were a pipe dream 40 years ago. I don't think if somebody had said in 40 years, this is where you're going to be, I wouldn't have believed it.
Right.
I really wouldn't have.
I think about that when I started teaching students, and I used to convince students what a great job it is. You know, you don't really make what you need to make, kind of had to be clear and honest. You know, you're not making a really, a wage that you deserve, but the work's so important.
Yes.
And then I remember the first, after the wage grid was put into place, that first group of students after that, and how excited I was to still convince them and help them understand how important the work was, but that they were starting to be paid in a measure that was representative of that.
Yeah.
And then when I told them one of my graduates bought his first home, I was dancing just like you. I was coming in saying, you can do this now. So things that, you know, students often will come in right out of high school and think, but that's not important. But we know you have to be able to make a livable wage. This work is hard. So to be able to say, it's okay that you don't need it yet, but it's there for you. And now our graduates are getting the information about pensions, and it's just, it makes my work so much more fun.
Yeah, I love, Maura brought up passion earlier.
Yeah.
And I know when I came into the field, it was because of my passion for working with children, because you were not making a wage that would help you live life. And you had to be in it because you loved working with the children. So it's been really cool. I know we go into the high schools and do presentations, and it's been really fun to be able to explain, here's what I made when I first started, and here's the wage grid and what you can actually make when you finish that 2-year diploma. So has it affected anyone else in that way, running a center or working as an ECE, maybe upgrading education?
I find as a director that the staff are certainly much more interested now that there's a bigger gap between perhaps an intern versus a level 3 ECE. They see that as something worthwhile to work toward.
Yes.
And with the pathways and the incentive with the pathways, with the support of directors, it makes a world of a difference.
Right.
It really does.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I know I worked for so many years, like just trying to convince myself to go back to school for it, because the way, as much as I love the job, trying to like, am I really gonna go back to school to, you know what I mean? But like, what pathway am I gonna take? And it really changed a lot. It really changed everything in my decision for sure.
Nice.
Yeah.
Yeah, me as well. I was working in the school age program and I really wanted to get into the sector, but I was like, I'm not sure if this is going to, you know, keep me like going like wage wise. And then when I was working in the school age, the wage grid came about, and then I was looking at it and I was like, oh my goodness, I'm going to be able to do what I want and still be able to feel like I'm comfortable and I can do other things in my world. So it was a game changer for me too. It was like not the final decision, but it was one of the factors in making my decision to go back to school. Just knowing I would be comfortable, but also being able to do something that I really wanted to do.
And still gives you that chance for work-life balance, which we know that most early childhood educators in the beginning, especially directors and owners of centers, maybe didn't have any work-life balance.
Even ECEs, we
Right.
would take home on the weekends. Oh my gosh, we would take home so many things. You couldn't go out and buy learning materials, you had to make your own. You had to color everything. You had to MAC tack it because there were no laminators.
That's right. Yeah.
You know, all of that sort of thing was done by hand. So we spent all of our weekends and our evenings doing that sort of prep work, as it were. There was no such thing as paid planning time or paid documentation time or anything like that.
And I think now, like some early childhood educators don't understand that that is actually a privilege now. And they're very thankful for the time, but kind of in the way hopes they wish they had more. Which don't we all wish we had more?
Yeah, you think of like the pedagogical support that allows you to come off the floor to do your planning and whatnot. But yes, you're right. Like so many of us took that home because the passion was obviously there, but like you wanted to provide these opportunities for the children that you're working with every day too. So.
Yeah, that's a huge workforce initiative.
Exactly.
Right, from the Canada-wide funding. The pedagogical support has been, I think, a game changer in a a lot of centers.
Absolutely.
Yeah, absolutely.
To have that extra support.
Imagine if we had more support. Oh my goodness. Things we could do. The work-life balance, the mental health, early childhood educators would just be phenomenal.
Absolutely.
But I think of just even like in the last 4 or 5 years where we've come with like those resources, right, from government, and I can only imagine what it was, what you've seen in your 42 years, in your close to 50 years, and your 15 years, right? Like there's been so much growth and change in just a short amount of time that like, there's so much potential.
Absolutely. Yeah. What about the EYC funding?
That's fantastic.
Just having a publicly funded program, right? A system on the
It's fantastic.
Yeah.
It really, it allows directors and owners to provide and support their early childhood educators with what they truly deserve. And knowing that the system is continuing to grow because our educators and our communities are continuing to grow. So we're growing with them and be able to not be strung within the means. We can guide them, we can walk the mile with them.
I remember when they were first looking at the early years system, they had an accountant go around and talk to all the different centers. And one of the things that stood out for me was he said there are a lot of centers out there that are one broken toilet away from the director not getting a paycheck.
Yes.
Right? And that was the reality back then. If something went wrong, you didn't get your pay, right? And that was...
Yeah, when that earlier center model first came in, I mean, not everybody was on board at first. It was because it was so different.
Yes.
And there were just a few that came forward. And I remember so many people who reached out to me, at least, and said, you know, what were you thinking of? You know, and you know, I wouldn't be able to have the kind of program that I want. But shortly after that first group came on, then a second group came on, and then it became like, oh, wait a minute, they're all happy, and look at how it's working for them. So, but I mean, that was 14 years ago, so it takes time, you know, to build that kind of system, and with that kind of change.
It was terrifying. It was terrifying. I can remember being at meetings and gosh, I can't remember the lady's name. She used to say, we're building the plane while we're flying it. And all I could think of was, okay, so you're in ground control where it's safe. I'm in the airplane with this business that I've spent the last several decades of my life building. And it was a huge leap of faith.
And nothing to compare it to, right? But 14 years later, like, look who's looking at us, right? Like the country's looking at us to say, how did they build this system? So,
And the reality is that wouldn't have even been in our experience if we didn't have the grief of losing our kindergarten system. Like where it transitioned from early childhood into the school system. It was, I remember that time vividly as a transition point in a turning point in our sector, because those same meetings, there was no sort of alignment yet in terms of the vision. It was just fear and panic and the unknown. And I know it was the ECDA working with the provincial government to say, you know, we all know this work. That's one thing I think for Prince Edward Island, we're so, I've said this many times, but we are so fortunate that the people who were designing it knew early childhood yourselves. Sonia and Alice and Kathy and all those folks who were designing this or guiding folks in one direction,
Yeah.
it wasn't a theoretical experience for them. Like you folks knew the work, and you could speak to people through the same language, right? And so it was the ECDA's work of saying this needs to be done, and how do we want to move forward in a positive way, and to get what needs to be in place for early childhood. So while it was scary, for me, when I think back to it, it was such a transitional point where and I think Kathleen, you've probably spoken to it before, and Elizabeth, where it was, this is my space and I'm protecting my business.
Yes.
And it became, we are a unified front to get the best services in place for children and families. And it's been an ongoing shift in that direction where now it's come to my center, come see what we're doing. And I'm coming out to see what you're doing. And that collegial relationship just keeps flourishing. But all of that came from kind of cutting it off at the roots, saying maybe we won't exist in 2 years, 5 years. And the sector saying, how do we want it to look?
Right.
So
I think one of the best things the ECDA did was create the Directors Network.
yeah.
Because we were all in our own little silos all over the island. And now all of a sudden we were coming together. And at the beginning, people were scared to speak up because you didn't want anybody to know that you didn't know what you were doing or you had this problem or this question. And lo and behold, everybody was struggling with the same thing. And we were there and able to support people through things and to pull in new directors. And from that, people created their own little directors network of like-minded folk that you could rely on. And it was a game changer. As a director, it was a huge change for me to feel that support, both in small groups as well as in the larger group within the meetings.
Yeah.
I still remember my first director group, and I'll talk about this till like, oh my goodness, I'll talk about this forever. But sitting across from Elizabeth Jeffrey, and she was talking about incredible, and be mindful, I'm this little brand new body in the field, and taking it all in and writing my chicken scrap, and everybody else is communicating, and I'm just staying quiet, me quiet. Super strange. And I'm writing everything down, and I remember leaving that meeting and be like, wow, she has so much passion. I want to be like her. Like, I want to be like you. So then every time she comes now, instead of me sitting across from her chicken scrap, I'm beside her, talking to her. So I'm pretty excited, but I agree. Even from like how many years you've been in the field and how many years I've been in the field, like you always have that one.
Yes.
Right? There's that one that you see and you're like, whoa, I want to be like, I want to be like her. I want to do that. And that was that for me. Yeah, thanks.
I'm there for you.
I know. But walk the mile.
We've all had mentors.
We've all
had mentors.
Yep.
My mentors are all now retired, and that's the direction I'm heading in. But with the directors group, we get to see the younger directors building up, and you see this sharing of information and passion, and sometimes
Fear.
it's just as easy as the solution is, who do you get to fix your dishwasher? Right?
Yes, absolutely.
It's something as simple as that.
Yeah.
But that support and having some place to reach out is really, really important.
Yeah.
Yeah, we hear that a lot, that mentorship is, and I've experienced it myself, it's so crucial to quality childcare.
Yeah.
So building that quality childcare system is to have some mentors and have that support as an early childhood educator, as educator staff, right, support staff and as directors. And it's really,
That less of feeling alone and more of feeling like a community.
Yes.
From tip to tip.
Yeah, and I love, Kim, that you referenced that before it was silos.
Yes.
Centers were
Yeah.
all siloed out. And now we really are seeing a lot more collaboration between centers and between staff, because they're now trying to build up an ECE network with the ECDA, which is really cool to see. And hearing the ECEs jump on and ask each other questions that you wouldn't get to ask your coworker who is in the thick of it with you. You can ask somebody from another center. Yeah.
Well, I think with like the director network and whatnot, you collaborate beyond that, like you mentioned. So you're creating like the workforce committee, right? That like, there's so much wisdom in that room that you can, create other opportunities off of that.
Which you might not have known.
Exactly.
Exactly.
Yeah.
and from all the levels of people working in the sector
Absolutely.
too.
Yes.
Which is so interesting because you can get such different viewpoints from each person.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Right?
Yeah.
And so important to include
Yeah.
everyone.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And everyone has so much value in their words and their experiences, no matter how far they've come or they just started. And it's so nice to be able to be a part of that journey with them. Yeah.
So what role do you see ECEs playing in the future? So early childhood educators, what role do you see them playing in the future of shaping childcare on PEI? And how do you think we could better support them in that?
I think more mentorship opportunities and in-service training would be great for the future. Just to kind of bridge that gap between education and being on the floor, for sure. Because I think that's a very important thing. Yeah.
So can I ask, do you mean specific training on how to be a mentor?
No, I would say just as the pedagogy staff and that gives time now for someone to be directly trained on the floor, not just here's a clipboard and
Good luck.
good luck.
Yes. Yes.
It's just nice having that time, even for directors, having that time to be on the floor more,
Yes.
not sitting at the desk doing paperwork.
Yes.
Yeah. And that opportunity of the onboarding toolkit, which is fantastic. A very new document by all means. So it's still getting in the works of getting out to everybody being able to chance to take the training, I should say. But the onboarding toolkit gives that exact, this is what to expect. So you don't feel like you're just given a clipboard and to make your way, for lack of better words. Just to know what's coming next, what's expected, and having that relationship even before it starts, and then slowly making your way in, so you feel at most comfortable, especially as you grow in their space.
And that's one of the reasons why I've always felt, and I've talked about this for years, that there should be specific training for mentors, because even though you don't consider yourself a mentor, if you have 5 years experience and you have a student fresh out of Holland College, you absolutely are their mentor. Yes. So then what specific skills do you need to have as a mentor, and what sorts of times do you need to set up to be able to have direct conversations and that sort of thing? And it's something I always felt was valuable and missing, quite honestly.
It's not just the director, it's the mentor itself.
Exactly.
Person in
And
and out.
people who mentor the students who come from Holland College and College to Little, how do you become a good mentor to that student? What does a good mentor look like?
Yeah.
I think for ECs to grow as well is giving them the platforms to be a part of things. So whether that's being a board member, whether that's being on a new committee, taking part in the ECE network, but also getting involved during conferences, right? Because I know when I started, I worked at one center and I thought, I didn't know if this was policy, if it was the center's policies, or this is just the way we do things here, right? Yeah. So it wasn't until I kind of became a director and got to see what other directors were doing that I was like, oh, okay, this is our center's maybe policy, but here's what other people are doing, and we can broaden ourselves this way. It doesn't have to be just this one way. Yeah. So I think giving them, I kind of keep talking about opportunity, but and just furthering their education, right? And just listening to what they want from their classrooms. That's one of a big thing of being a director is I don't like going into a classroom and saying it needs to be run like this because it's their classroom, it's the children that they're working with, right? So listening to what they are wanting. I think that's a big part of
level.
Just going back to what you were saying about, as an ECE not knowing, is this a regulation, or is this policy, or is it just that we all like to do it this way?
Yeah.
When I was working in government, we would be astounded at the number of ECEs who would say, oh, well, this is a regulation. And we think, God, there's so many things people think are part of the regulations, and that's not true at all.
I think it was 2017, new acts and regs came out, and everyone's like, are you going to the new acts and regs? I'm like, sure. I have no idea what that really means. But I went and I sat and I listened. I was like, wow, there's a lot of policy that we're supposed to be, this is a part of my job, and this is what I need to know, right? But yeah, there's just so many times where you do get put into a center and you don't really have the know of outside that classroom, really. Right. So, yeah.
But I think that the ECDA has a big role in all of this. I mean, and yes, there's a lot of responsibility on directors for mentoring new staff and students that are coming from Holland College. But, you know, the ECDA's, I'm so happy to hear about this ECE network, because the ECDA has more of a provincial look, and government really does listen to what the sector is saying. But the ECDA's got to have that information to be able to bring it forward. I mean, they're just finalizing, you know, this director survey and the early childhood educators survey that were done last March. And there's so much material in there. And for the ECDA to keep doing that and inviting that information, because not everybody gets to go to a conference or, you know, be part of the ECE network. So other ways, like how does the ECDA reach out and bring everybody in, regardless of whether you're the brand new staff person who's not going to get to go to, you know, these different kinds of events. So yeah, I think the ECDA plays a major role in that. And they have for so many years now. And I think that's a big part of what has moved PEI along.
Building that bridge, right? Knowing, having the information and taking it over the bridge.
Right. I got to do my final practicum with the ECDA, which was super cool. So I got to work. Megan McPhee was my direct supervisor, but I got to kind of see what everybody does. And before I went to do my practicum, I didn't know how broad and how far the ECDA really went with all of their resources and their mentoring. And then I was in it and I was like, oh my goodness, like the branches that go off this place is crazy. Like it's this massive tree, and the ECDA are just kind of like the roots of everything, and they're just branching off and kind of exploring everything. So it was super cool to see that and to be able to be mentored by the ECDA and not just Megan McPhee, but everybody at the ECDA. It was super cool to see all the different jobs and everything that happened there. So that was really awesome for me personally to be a part of the ECDA, even if it was only for a little bit, and to kind of see the insides more. And I helped like set up the conference, and I helped with like the social media and stuff like that. So just things that I normally wouldn't get to do, I was given the opportunity to do that, and they trusted me to kind of do with the social media. They were just like, go take pictures, like you got this. And I was like, I do got this. So that was super cool. It gave me a lot of confidence as well, and going into my workplace being like, oh, like I got this. Megan said I got it. So
That's an analogy used often.
So if ECDA does have those opportunities and those supports, how would we support ECEs or early childhood educators and interns and associates? How would we support them in joining in, or how would you suggest bringing them in and making them feel that connection and the mentorship that some is available and we want to build more? How would that happen?
I feel like there are many who will seek that out, right? They'll find their own way to what fits for them.
Yes.
But I'm always drawn to the folks who are more hesitant or less certain. And I don't know that I even have an answer for what that would look like, but I really feel like there's often the same people in the room.
Yes.
And I feel like there's a much bigger group who want to be involved, but don't necessarily have maybe the confidence, like you say, Maura, or just something to sort of take that first step. So I don't know, but I think that's kind of something to target. How do we get those who are more hesitant or less sure to join in, like you say, just to attend things and just to reach out? And maybe it's even starting with more, I don't know, some more virtual kinds of connections, or team-based with centers or something, so that they come with a peer who is more comfortable. Or and the conferences do a lot of that, because you have over 800 people in one room, and then you have the smaller groupings. So that might be an in to some who are, because I think with my students, I'll often have a student who is less temperamentally, is just more cautious, right? They're watchful, and they'll see someone who is very flamboyant and big and be right up and introducing themselves, and they think, oh, I can't do that, so I won't do that. So you don't have to do that. You can find another route that your personality suits. And so it's maybe helping everybody see where their voice is, because I think that's the next piece for the ECDA, is to make sure that everyone knows where their voice can fit. You know what I mean? And that their voice is
and maybe it's like, I know there is collaboration with the colleges, but maybe there's like a mentorship happening right while they're in school, right? And then how does that expand into the workforce? I know for myself as a director, I often kind of look at the ones that might be a little bit more quieter in our staff meetings or in the collaboration, but have a lot to offer. And it says, like, I'll say, why don't you try it out this month? Like, head to the network, and you'll always gain something from it. You truly will. But yeah, maybe more collaboration with the colleges might be an idea of like introducing them right, from day one.
They come pretty early. Even orientation.
This is an association, and this is such a valuable resource for you as an educator, and where you're going to go with your career. So maybe.
Yeah, one expression I keep hearing all across the country is that the director is the gatekeeper to quality.
That's beautiful.
Everybody talks about that.
Yes.
Yeah.
It really does. Our educators are day in, day out with these children and families, and we're the only one in that space that can step back to look unless we invite someone into the space. So how you know your staff the best, other than that they know themselves, but like they know your staff the best. Pull in what is valuable to them.
I know
offer.
that's why I entered the field, was because of a director.
Yeah.
I knew her a long time. I always loved children, always loved working with children and babysitting. And then had the opportunity to work with this director and just on a summer job. And then I just loved the way that she ran her center as a community. She included the families in everything. And she was a huge mentor to me in that way, that the center was a family, right? And it was that leadership, and led me into it. And she was part of the ECDA in different ways. So then I was always interested in what the ECDA was doing.
Oh, that's beautiful.
You're right.
That is beautiful.
Yeah,
And
the director is the gatekeeper.
Yeah. Thank you for sharing that analogy. I really like that.
Yeah. So that kind of leads us into recruitment and retention in a big way. We do know that if someone is really involved, they can recruit. How can PEI continue to attract and retain high quality early childhood educators? We do have a big population, growing population, lots of families with needs.
We talked a lot about wages, and wages are great right now. They need to continue to stay within the means of the workforce, obviously. Like that's a given. But with that said, wage isn't everything.
Right.
So knowing and from the core of your body that you are a professional, we are professionals, and together we create this network of community, and that together looks like passion. Yeah.
I think it has a lot to do with how ECEs work, because if I was thinking about, what kind of career choice I might want to make, if I knew an ECE or heard of ECEs who were always talking about, oh, this is so tiring, I never get a break, yada, 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 all the bad things, well, that's off my list. I'm not going to go there. But if I hear people talk about how wonderful it is to, be so involved with families and children, and, just seeing, like, right before your eyes how children are learning and changing, and, like just the look on a child's face when they make some amazing discovery because they've just done something and now they realize what they did to make that happen. Then people are more inspired to think, wow, that might be so interesting to work. So I think a lot of the recruitment comes from the current ECEs and directors and how people portray the work that they do.
I think there's big things happening with the accelerated programs and whatnot, and I think that needs to continue. We're seeing a lot of people come from out of province with certain levels of certification, and if we can kind of keep on top of like how do we create new opportunities for their next learning opportunity, right? So accelerated might not be that option, but I know I did a part of the blended program, which is no longer a program, but for that time it worked for the people that were in the program with me, and then we had accelerated happen. But maybe the next step is to be looking like, okay, we have a certain group of people who need this type of education, and how do we offer it, whether it's with our colleges or maybe it's with a, you know, like a different university or college out of province. Yeah, I think we kind of always have to be aware of like what's next, right? So because education is an extremely important aspect to retention and hiring and whatnot. And I think, as long as we can kind of keep on top of that and see, you know, what are the trends that are happening and what is it that people are looking for, whether that's online learning, in-person learning, maybe a blended program for both. Like you would see that often. So
Professional development in general, you know, because I know like I came up through the accelerated program and I felt so lucky to be able to take it kind of midway after already working for so many years. You know, it kind of inspires you again.
absolutely,
You know, so it's just, I know I look so forward to the conferences every year, and I don't think that any educator ever leaves those without coming back looking at their classroom differently.
Right.
Yeah.
I think a lot of the opportunities that have come in the last 20 years are a lot to do with the work that you've done, Kathleen, to help us look at how do we offer different pathways for students to continue their education, to gain education. And like you say, there's been all forms from my first days. I joined when they were running a blended or an accelerated program, and we've had different variations since. But I think you're right, Erin. It's how do we look at offering a number of pathways that are secure and stable, not kind of project-based and one-off, so that people can choose what suits their lifestyle or their needs, but also to continue their education, and finding, like you were mentioning too, finding ways for folks who are coming to PEI with certifications or training from other parts of the world. How do we help them bridge, and how do we gain from what they're bringing to us too? How do we gain new insights into education and early childhood with the diversity that we're seeing in our sector now, which I think is really valuable.
We are seeing a huge change in the population on PEI
Yeah.
and diversity in our sector. So what changes in our sector could we be seeing in the future, or what could we be making to help improve EC lifestyles and integrating these new families and individuals into our centers? Has anyone done any changes?
Well, I think one thing that we've seen changing, and hopefully will continue to change, is that more men are coming into the early childhood sector.
Exactly.
And I think the wages have a lot to do with that. I mean, you know, years ago, you know, there might be one man, but now I see at conferences, you know, there's so many more men that are involved. It's quite striking.
Yes. Yeah. And I think that's a reflection of our society.
Yes.
When my program first opened, you wouldn't see a father walk through the door unless his wife was in active labor at the hospital, right? Now, the vast majority of parents dropping off in my center right now are the dads, right? So the men, their role is looked at differently, and they are looked at, and it's okay to be a nurturer and carer, and that is then translating into men coming into the field, and I love it. I love it. Men bring a whole different feel to the program.
And I feel like I agree that it's a reflection of society, but I feel like our sector is also primed to be a leader in how our society emerges. And I feel like, for me, I've been doing a lot of thinking about this lately, but I feel like the next wave of innovation for early childhood will be to continue and try to build a socio-cultural environment where equity is at the fore, you know, where we're looking at gender, we're looking at race, we're looking at all of these aspects of social identity and saying, how are you seen here? How are you represented here? Whether you're the educator or the family or the child, that everyone feels like they have a place. And I feel like we can do that with materials, which is really important. But when you dig deeper into those more nuanced aspects of our socio-cultural experience, I feel like that's where we really will go next as a society, and we will lead society to say, this child is perfect. And that child is represented in this space, and then it starts to trickle out. Bronfenbrenner's work. We're all around that child. We can create the message that ripples back out to help society sort of come along with some of our newer, and more challenging aspects of our.
I think that the curriculum framework and the learning goals talk about that as well, because when you think of well-being, and I know it's said in the curriculum framework document, so yes, you're focused on the well-being of the child and what that means, but you can't consider the well-being of the child unless you consider the well-being of the educators. And you can't consider the well-being of the child unless you consider the well-being of those families. So all of those learning goals apply to everybody, not just the children. And so that makes the case, I guess, for making sure that educators feel well-being and educators feel that they have the capacity or the permission to be able to discover new things and try new things. So all of those goals really apply to everyone, and I think that addresses some of the questions that we've all been asking, and I know it's been asked in centers. How do we involve families who are newcomers to Canada, and newcomers to PEI, and make them feel welcomed and part of things? So it's I think we've got some of those things in place, but we need to just really dig down into them a little bit deeper.
We started using SurveyMonkey for our new families, and we sent a survey to all families, and basically it would ask questions like, how many's living in the household? Does your child have a nickname? All those details like that. But then it goes a little bit deeper where, where's your home country? Is there any special traditions that you would like to share with us? Does your child play in sensory play that's food at home? Those things that, we might not think of, we might just be second nature to do, but could be very offensive to some other cultures. So to be mindful and respectful on a greater level without that second nature feel at the same time. Yeah,
it looks like we're moving more toward going back to that village, right? Our society really moved away from villages, helping to raise our children and build that foundation, and it really sounds like that's something that everyone is aspiring to, is trying to build those villages again and bring everyone in.
And I think of like lifestyle, right? Maybe it's not that your center's open 9 to 5, right? Maybe there's those extended hours. And maybe, I think we've looked at it a few times, but maybe it's, childcare on Saturdays and what that looks like, or maybe overnight childcare for, people who work at the hospital or whatever it may be. So, Yeah,
I hear of a few centers who do a sleepover every once in a while. And I know parents love that experience. That because they know that they have the trusted educators.
We did. We had a DJ. It was great. It was fun.
So how do you see the ECDA being involved in this evolution into the next future of childcare, and how has it been involved in the past, if you want to talk about those moments that you think of?
I feel like the ECDA's always been our foundation. We talk about bringing children into our programs and giving them the foundation of what they need to be successful humans. And I feel like the ECDA, since my time, has always been that foundation of where people came together. It used to be at kitchen tables. There was no such thing as an office or a photocopier. People came together at Kathy McCormick's kitchen table and stuffed envelopes and had their children licking envelopes and putting on stamps. And we used to travel from center to center every month. So you got to go into other people's centers to see what they had. And the carrot was, there was an equipment library. So you would see teachers walking in with wooden climbers to exchange. And so the ECDA has always been that entity that brought people together, made us think, made us look to the future of what could be. And I think that they just need to continue in that role. They've grown hugely. It's no longer a volunteer organization. It's a big team. as Maura said, like there are so many branches, and they are our roots or our foundation. So you keep up the good work.
I remember my very first ECDA meeting. I was brand new to Canada, brand new to PEI. And I don't know how I met this woman, but I did. And she also was interested in early childhood. I was young, I had no kids. I opened Montessori Children's Center back in January of '76. So this was the summer before. And she said, well, there's this new group and it's called the ECDA, and I'm going to go to a meeting. Why don't you come with me? So off I go with this woman, and it was at Holland College, and it was in a little classroom. There might have been this many people around the table. It was very tiny. And people were talking about these new regulations that were going to come because there were no regulations before that. And where I had been teaching, I was teaching in Boston, and I was thinking, I don't even know if there are regulations in Boston because I didn't have to deal with that. I just went to my class every day. But people were talking about early childhood in PEI and what could be and where they wanted to go. And it was fascinating to listen to people, way back then thinking about what could this be when there was pretty much nothing. And then see how some of those, wishes or thoughts came true over the years. So but it was really different in the beginning.
Oh my
I forgot about stuffing the envelopes.
Stuffing envelopes.
That was right.
Yeah.
Oh man, we used to hate. We dread the conferences because we have to do all this stuff by hand. Remember that?
Oh gosh, yes, I remember it well.
Oh yeah.
I think it's so meaningful to know the history of the ECDA, right? Because if we know the history and to hear these stories and to know why it began, and how it was worked to help advocate and push the early childhood sector forward, and how the values from then are still really very similar, right? And how that work is still continuing on.
Yes.
It's so interesting though that from those days to now, the association has obviously grown in size, but it's always consistently been the channeler of many voices, the unifier of many voices. So back then there were fewer voices, but they were still hearing and seeking, what do people want us to do? And that was always their guidelines and their motivating kind of direction. And that's, even as recently as the multilateral agreement, there were cross-island meetings saying, what's this money going to look like for you? What do you want us to do? It wasn't, here's what we're doing with that FYI. It was pulling people who wanted to have a voice together and dream together, and then they go and do the work of thanks. So they take it away and they structure the programs or the grant requests or the policies that they would recommend. So all those things, regardless of what point in history we've been, that's been ECDA's role. So that's really cool.
They care for us with compassion.
And that's somewhat unique in Canada, and I hear that because I work with a lot of other provinces and territories. And people say, you're so fortunate in PEI that you've got the Early Childhood Development Association, which is one provincial association, everybody belongs to it. Because in some other provinces, there's either nothing in place, and so there's no link between the sector and the policymakers or funders, or there are 3 or 4 or more competing organizations, and one says this and the other says that. So, whose voice gets heard when it comes to those policy and funding decisions. But in PEI, it's always been the ECDA, and it's been such a strong voice. It's made a huge difference, but it's noticed across the country.
The other thing that I've always felt incredibly fortunate with, again, in talking with people from different provinces, is that our Department of Education has mindfully hired folks who are ECEs instead of people who are policymakers. Nothing wrong with policymakers. However, unless you know the background of what the work looks like, you can't really make informed decisions and make good decisions. And I've always felt that we had such a good working connection between government and the ECDA, and that it works beautifully. We have a government that's been respectful, and not just this government, but governments in the past have been respectful we're always asking, what do you need? How can we make things better? And it's just been a beautiful relationship for many years.
Yeah.
It was always helpful being in government and being able to say with 100% conviction, when somebody from some other division would propose something, to say, oh no, that will never fly. Or to propose something and people would say, oh, nobody's going to do that. Oh yes, people will do that. That's what people want. So it goes both ways.
Yeah.
Yeah, I've got to say that I feel like in the short time that I've had involvement with the ECDA and working with them, that like my voice always has felt heard when it does go to the policymakers and whatnot. So I always think, when you get that email from Megan McPhee, like you answer that phone call, or you answer that email because there's change to come, right? Like, and you're a part of that change. Yeah.
Absolutely.
So what's your hope for the next 10 years?
To continue as we are right now. I think going uphill is what we've been doing, and I think keep climbing would be a great way to put it. Because there's, like everybody says that's in the sector, like we are lifelong learners, and I feel like everything can be a lifelong learner. So if it just continues in the positive way that it's been going, I feel like that's a really good start.
I hope that in 10 years, you're all sitting around the table talking about the 60th anniversary. Maybe not me and you, but
I'll come back. I always have an opinion. I always have an opinion.
yeah.
Yeah. I hope that a lot of the changes that we've seen from the federal government have been on an economic lens. When the pandemic happened, that was like the strike that we always needed, but nobody wanted to put parents through that.
Yes.
So it made government, especially the feds, sit back and say, oh, we really cannot function as a country. And right now they're looking at this money that they're putting in as an economic bridge. Can't think of the right word. But what I would love to see in 10, 15, 20, 30 years is that they look at it as this is what's best for the children. That's my dream, is that they see the importance of the work that we do. And it's not just about getting women out to work and, the tax base and that sort of thing, but this is what's best for the children. And that's why we're putting the money into it.
Three words that come to mind when I look at sort of next steps in the 10 years. I'd love to be able to say in 10 years, we are a healthy, joyful, engaged workforce. Those three things all mean something totally different. This work is a relational work. And I think when we talk economy, it's so important, but we lose sometimes that element of we're working with human beings. We're working with little children and their families. And to do that really well, you have to personally invest. You can't do that just for a paycheck. You can't do it well for a paycheck, which we still need that too. But to do it really well and personally invest, it takes a toll, right? Because it just mentally, physically, spiritually, it takes a toll on a person. And so my picture is in 10 years, just like you're saying, Elizabeth, that it's become just understood that the economic benefits are there, but that we are again leaders to a healthy, joyful, and engaged workforce, and then we can promote that across the country. This is how you create that. But that's what our educators need. That's what children thrive within, and that's what families will feel so successful when we can build that in each early childhood environment. It's recruitment, it's retention, it's all the things that we say are our issues. It's just them making the decisions that get us on that path.
Back in 2010, when, as you mentioned before, that whole crisis, all the 5-year-olds are going to the school system and what's going to happen, and government had contracted with me to look at the early childhood sector and how to strengthen things. And so I did lots of focus groups and interviews with people all across PEI. And so I asked the question, so what is this all about? Is this about having high quality early learning experiences for children? Or is this about making sure that parents can go to work or go to school and function as a family? And usually people would start off saying, oh, well, it's both. I said, well, no, you have to pick one. Like, what's the number one reason? And to a person, everybody said it's about the early learning experiences for children, because it didn't matter. If it was only about employment, then what about a little fishing village where employment was big in May and June and maybe into July, but not for the rest of the year? So do they deserve to have early childhood options in that community? Well, if it's only about jobs, if that's the number one reason, then no. But if the number one reason is about having early learning experiences, high quality for every child, that totally changes how you approach things, because then it doesn't matter about the jobs and the hours. That helps, and it's a secondary reason. But if the primary reason is, as you say, to build something for children, then that makes a difference in how you go forward.
Yeah.
I hope accessibility and affordability continues to thrive. I don't want to see PEI survive at any point or come to a standstill. In the next 10 years, I want us to continue to thrive as a passionate sector. Yeah.
Thank you all very much for joining us. This was a wonderful discussion. I hope we all get to do it again sometime.